Elizabeth Gilbert called, I think it's called Idea Magic, maybe. I'm flubbing the title on that for just a moment. But there's this book that she wrote that essentially says that you have an idea, right? And then you kind of see things in the box and you're like, I can complete it this way and it'll get done. But if I share the idea with someone else, it's going to blossom and grow into something that's different, but still be magical. And so I think what I've had to learn being ADHD, neurodivergent, is allowing other people the opportunity to grow in leadership so that I don't move into the state of burnout of like, I can do that, and moving into that state. Because if I take on too much, then I know personally, I'm going to get to a point where my body's going to start to tell me it's going to start to ache. And then I'm going to get sick. And then I get into this state where like, I'm not functional for like a week. And that's to anybody in my life, right? My family, my loved ones, my friends. I don't want to go out, and I have to, that's what burnout looks like for me, where I just don't want to participate. But if I sit down and I say, okay, here's the list and tasks that I'm going to do and that I can take on, but how can I let other people build and make magic on some of these other ideas that I don't want to manage or I can't manage, or that's going to be outside of my scope for the timeline that I have, So that's just kind of like some tools that I put into my toolbox of being neurodivergent, that works for me. I think everyone's kind of you have to listen to your body and how your mind and how you interact. And I'd love to hear more, because I think there's a lot of talent on this call. Like I think Bevan has some great insight. Dr. Heather's going to have some incredible insight on this, but I'd love to hear more about some of those kinds of things, like maybe managing your own personal toolbox with the superpowers that you have personally, and listening to your body.
Yeah, no, and Antonio, that's actually great, and I think the book you're referring to, I think it's Big Magic or something like that. Yeah, I think that's the name of the book. But like what you just said, it's spot on, right? And different people have to understand that we have variations. There are people who've got ADHD. There are other people who might be like dyslexic, other people who just might be on like Asperger's or autism, like variations. And then just normal high performers who just work very hard or have a very hustle culture. Maybe their parents are the firstborns and there's a lot of pressure on them, and it manifests differently, right? Like it manifests differently, and it's great that you were able to like speak to that. And I would love, Dr. Heather, because you have like this psychological perspective on this. I would love for you to like share some context on that if you'd like.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that I'm being very clear that burnout it's personal, but it's also systemic. And I'm coming at it from as a high performer myself, as first generation American myself, with all of the messages about, hey, you go to work, you do a good job, you work hard, everything is going to work out, stay busy. When my parents call me, when my family calls me, when they ask how I'm doing, if I said I'm busy, they're like, good, you're killing it, you're doing great. So there's a lot that's wrapped up in identity on the personal side that can put you in a situation, if you're a high performer, to become an overperformer who is at higher risk of burnout. And the research shows us that high performers are actually at a higher risk. They burn out faster than lower performers. And it's because they care more. They care about the company. They care about the work that they're doing. They want to deliver something that's really quality. They want to go higher. They want to rise and be considered for promotions and all of that. So they grind. They're not just thinking about themselves. They're also thinking about the people who rely on them. And so they care deeply. And because they care more, they do more. And because they do more, guess what? They get more. They get more praise for being the kind of person who holds everything down, for being the strong one. And they also get more work because leadership knows that they're reliable. So it's kind of a double-edged sword for high performers, because in many cases, their identity is totally wrapped up in their achievements and in how much they can carry historically. So sometimes it can be hard to know, where's the line? Where's the line between, oh, this is really exciting. I was able to handle 8 phone calls today, 8 different meetings, and I knocked that out the park and I did a great job. I'm excited. I'm pumped. Where's the line between that and, oh, I took on 1 too many meetings today. I said yes to 1 too many projects, and it's a month out, and now I'm kind of regretting saying yes to all of that. And so it's okay that they can handle a lot. It's fine until they start to find themselves in this situation where they aren't getting the support that they need at work. And from my perspective, and there's some research on this as well, there's a lot of reasons why people get to the point where they're actually burned out. Lots and lots of reasons within the organization. But there was a meta-analysis, which means it's a study that looked across studies and to try and figure out what actually contributes to burnout. And the number one factor is an unsustainable workload. So when you're looking at scheduling and you're thinking about everything that's on your plate, if you are taking more and more time out of your personal life to get work done, if you're finding yourself saying, oh, it's okay, I can do that over lunch. Oh, it's okay, I can wake up a little bit earlier. Oh, it's okay, I can handle that on the weekend. Those are warning signs that your workload is unsustainable. It's starting to creep into your personal life, your rest time, your time to recharge and come up with new creative ideas. And that's one of the biggest contributors to burnout. But a lack of support at work doesn't just look like a lot of work. It can also look like not enough recognition, not enough appreciation for everything that person's doing and the sacrifices that they're making for the company. It can look like a misalignment between what the company says it values and what's actually happening. And that leads to this sense of disillusionment. Like, why am I doing all of this for a company that I don't necessarily believe in, or for a group that I don't believe in anymore? It can also look like not enough resources to get the job done. And there's still an expectation that the work is going to be delivered flawlessly. So a lack of support at work, coupled with some of these vulnerabilities on the personal level, lead to this formula, I would say, where burnout is much more likely.
Oh, right, Dr. Heather, that was actually quite brilliant. And just for those who've just joined the call right now, I encourage you to also just share your stories, drop some questions in the chat. We can also interact with those directly. This is on Facebook, this is on LinkedIn, this is on StreamYard itself. Wherever you're watching from, just drop a comment and questions, and we will also try to rope those into the conversation as we go through. But just speaking about the intensities of burnout, and I know different people are coming for different reasons. Some are I feel like I'm going through burnout, and others are maybe I'm just overwhelmed. High performers can tend to not realize it's too late. It's like falling in love. You don't know when you've fallen in love until you're there. So it's one of those kind of situations. So I'm truly interested in, how does someone reset from burnout? What are the best ways to overcome it? Like a bad hangover. What do you drink? Do you wake up with chai tea and it's gone? Or what exactly is it? Do you drink creatine? Do you know, is it your diet? I'm quite interested in that. Dr. Heather, if you just add on to that, then I'll jump over to Bevan.
Okay, so depending on how bad it is, how long it's gone, it could take longer. It could require more intervention. You can screen for burnout. There are lots of screener tools out there. I popped 2 in the chat. The first one is the ProQoL. It's the Professional Quality of Life measure. So if you're a healing arts professional, social worker, doctor, there is a special one for doctors that's separate. But if you are in a profession where you help people, you are at risk of something similar to burnout. It's called compassion fatigue, where you just don't care anymore. We're adding you just don't care anymore. The ProQoL is for you. I encourage you to take that. And then for everyone else, you can take the burnout assessment tool, and that one will give you an idea of where you stand. And if you find yourself in this place where you're like, oh, I think this might be me. I've gone on a vacation and I come back and I still feel tired. I don't want to do anything. My performance is slipping. I would encourage you to take a look at the root of whatever it is. So you may have some physical symptoms that you'll have to deal with. I know personally, I'll just speak for myself for a minute. The last time, and I say the last time because I've been burnt out multiple times in my life. The last time I went through a burnout cycle, it took me almost a year to recover from that. And that was because there were physical symptoms that I had to deal with. I had gastrointestinal issues. I had issues because I was sitting all the time. My body was breaking down, right? And my chiropractor was like, "What are you doing? This like you keep coming in with like some really weird stuff going. What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm sitting. I'm just sitting. I'm getting things done." So there's physical stuff that you have to take care of. Sleep, rest, eating on a consistent basis, and eating for energy. Sleep so that you can get some energy, right, for what you're doing. But then there's the psychological side of it as well. There's going deep inside to say, okay, self, why does this keep happening? Why is this happening right now? And then why does this keep happening? What is it about the way I'm going about my day and my life that puts me in a position where I'm saying yes to too many things? That puts me in a position where I'm valuing other people's time, other people's sort of requests and needs and priorities over my own, where I'm saying, I will work on your project and I won't sleep tonight. Like those are hard questions that you have to ask yourself. And then you have to say, okay, I have the answer. The answer is because I don't value my own time. The answer is because I take my sense of worth from some external source, right? And your answers may be different. Your questions may be different. Your situation may be a little bit different. But for me, it required physical management, but then also going into that deep psychology of the why is this happening? And let me start practicing a new way of being and a new way of thinking that gives myself more grace. So I'd love to hear from Bevan, and now that I've let you all know what's going on with me.
No, definitely, Bevan, please jump in, because I'm just curious, as in, like from a professional level, we're always trying to get that promotion. We are always trying to hustle. As an entrepreneur, it's not easy, especially in different geographics. So you find that in the context of Botswana, a lot of the times entrepreneurs have to do multiple things to break even, to make money, right? Whereas in larger economies like China's in the US, you can actually focus on one thing and be quite successful in that and get paid well. So you could consider that the entrepreneurship economy of small countries like Botswana is akin to the work economy of the USA, where people are doing like double shifts, double jobs after the other. So it's like that, but now for a whole business. So it's very, very interesting. And it's like there's a huge burnout capacity. But like you're saying, that reset function, I know, Bevan, you probably consulted with so many different businesses. Like when you're doing that, like how do you see and how do you think people manage that reset in your perspective?
Yeah, there's a few different ways that I can respond to this. So I think the first thing, though, is really just to recognize when you're in that situation. You can do it all, but not at the same time. And so we have to make choices about what we can take on and recognize when you might become overburdened or over capacity, and that one more ask or one more opportunity that falls into your lap is the one that's going to be the tipping point for you. So I think the first step is really just to acknowledge that you might be excited about doing everything, but it's just not possible sometimes to take it all on. And so being in a position where you can not default to yes and let me figure it out. The answer might be yes, I can do that and I can fit it into my workload, and you're excited about it. It's a great fit for you. You can make an impact, and that's the happy path. The answer might be yes, but not right now. I can do yes, and I can start that project or take on that ask in 3 weeks when this other thing, winds down and I have a little bit more capacity in my schedule. Or it could be, no, I really can't do that right now. You might consider asking this person who has the expertise to help you. I can't do it now. However, maybe we can redesign it in a way that would fit and that would work. I can't do it now, but if we find a way to have somebody else take on this other thing that's on my plate, then I could create space for that. So then it opens up a conversation with your manager or your team about priorities. And I think it's maybe, I think even for me, when I was earlier in my career, I was so hesitant to have a conversation like that. I was like a yes all the time and give me more and I can handle it. And I still remember one of my managers saying I had such a high capacity to work, and he didn't realize that I was, nights and weekends and burning the midnight oil. And, it's just the reality of the culture in the profession I was in the country I was in the age that I was at. I think we've evolved, frankly, and that we can have more open conversations with our coworkers and our leaders about what's going on and have a discussion about priorities, and also have a discussion about what needs to be true in order for you to be able to do the things that you're being asked to do. That could be, I can do this, I need some more leverage. So could I have someone else on the team help me with this? It could, or maybe it's hiring another company to help you with what, depends on the size of the project or the work. It could be, I can do this, but I need some funding. And the funding might be to help out with the additional leverage. It might be to automate something. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different things. Maybe something comes off your plate. Maybe you move out the date a little bit. But I think having a discussion about what needs to be true and what kinds of accommodations could be made is a healthy conversation to have. And I think my experience is that, in the cases that I've been involved, whether it's been someone on my team asking or whether I've been asking, I've actually been delighted and surprised that the company culture is such that they're ready to, make those accommodations and figure it out. So if there is an awareness about what someone is dealing with and about what accommodations or supports you can put in place, my experience is that everyone around you is willing to do it. But if they don't know, and you're suffering, they don't, they may not recognize it because they've got their own stuff going on. But if you put the ask out there, then normally people try to figure out how to help you. So I'll just maybe pause there and it's like a little bit of recognition, assessing your options, and having the confidence to ask, talk about it and ask for some support.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I love what you said and the examples that you shared about how you can push back. I want to speak to the idea of boundaries because I don't know how you both feel, but personally, I've had to do some work on the word boundaries because it comes with this. Some people have no problem setting boundaries, and those are not the people who need to hear about burnout. I'm talking to anyone who hears the word boundaries and they think, oh no, I'm going to enter into a conflict situation. It's icky. I don't feel comfortable with this. What if I lay down a boundary and it's like I'm laying down a wall, and what if I need to move the wall? What if, is this a forever thing? One thing that helped me to be okay with the concept of setting a boundary, I don't even think about it as boundaries anymore. I think about it as, what am I available for? And that takes a lot of the emotion out of it. You know, if you ask me to do something, I'm going to take a second. I'm going to look at my schedule, my personal schedule, as well as my work schedule. And I'm going to say, am I available? Do I even have space for this? Do I have emotional space for this? Because it works with your friends too. And if someone asks you to do something, am I available for this right now? So I don't know if that reframing helps anyone. I love what you said in the examples that you shared, Bevan. I wanted to just add a quick reframe around the word boundaries for anyone who might be struggling with that concept and feeling like, okay, now I have to go to war with people over boundaries that I'm setting, when really it's right now, what am I available for?
Yeah, no, that's great. And Tony, just before we jump into, I just wanted to share like a perspective with what you both shared out. It's quite interesting because a lot of the people on this call have varying experiences and varying age demographics. So I think there's something that we should also be cognizant of, listeners as well, is that there is a season for everything, right? There is a time where you actually do need to like work hard, build that grit muscle, and don't be afraid of doing that, because some of these people on the call with us, to be a doctor, it's like 8 years of studying or 6 years of studying. Like that is not like, if you're burned out, well, you're not going to get your degree. So it's like, it's one of those things where something just has to suck it up. And to be a partner like a large organization, like these are things where, like Bevan, you mentioned it, like the capacity to just keep doing work, right? But that, when your manager said that to you, you ended up promoted quite quickly. So as much as, yes, there was burnout, there are fruits of those burnouts. Not always. I'm not saying that people now should just be like, I need burnout. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just like, you should recognize that hard work in the right environments, is recognized and it's rewarded, and you can still be that way. So it's something that I always like, we should pay attention. Like, don't think, now I'm not ready for this, I don't have time for this, I'm doing something else, to every single request, especially when you're younger and you actually have the energy. When you're older, it's, what do they say? You pay for with the pleasures of today, you pay for them tomorrow, or something like that. So you have that cognizant.
And I think in the UK, they say, chew your hard bread when you're young.
Yes. Well, you still have to chew them, right? Yeah, exactly. So, So double down.
I mean, this kind of like, I'm making an assumption that, people are committed to doing a good job, right? Like it's, people are motivated to succeed and to work hard and drive impact. And that doesn't necessarily translate into like hours. You can like drive outcomes and impact if you work in ways that are optimizing your time and you think about, what are the ways that I can do this most efficiently? And it may not be only you. It may be creating a team around you so that, what do they say? Fly alone, die alone. Like if you're trying to do something on your own and you fail, then, you only have yourself to blame. But the more you bring people along with you, the more perspectives you get, the more unique ideas that you get, the more opportunity there you have to collaborate and have a greater impact and do it together and optimize everyone's time. So just, I think there's an assumption that people are motivated to do a good job. And there's some tools that we can use to, kind of protect ourselves so that we don't go over, that we don't overdo it in a sustained way. There are, in my career, there are peaks and valleys. There are times when it's, just like a plethora of, needs from our clients, depending on the economy, depending on the political situation, depending on what's going on in the world. And then, sometimes there are windows that it's a little quieter. And I used to really have like guilt and like, make up things to do when those quiet periods hit. And I think it's just, again, recognizing when you're, in a time where it's really intense, and then also recognizing when you're in a time where you can just have a little bit of space to think and not feel so guilty about it. You can be thoughtful about how you line up the next steps. I did see one comment in the chat here.
Yeah, I was about to get to that. I was gonna say, Antonio, maybe what you can do is, like, there are a few comments in the chat, and I was gonna say, in my mind, prevention is better than cure. So preventative measures to burnout, like what would you consider? Bevan mentioned a few, like tools, and then that, I'm guessing everyone's thinking AI, like how do we automate things? So I would love Antonio to also speak on those comments and that perspective, as well as some people say, is burnout a sign to decrease or adapt? And I guess it's just how you view it, meaning, does that mean changing your workflow, changing your lifestyle? Like you said, those employing these tools that Dr. Heather and Bevan, you've mentioned earlier, of like, do I have time for this? That's a form of adaptation. So Antonio, what do you think? Prevention better than cure? And like, what tools do you think we could use to prevent that burnout in a whole?
Years ago, I would have probably said adapt. And at this point in time, I would now say prevention is better. Decrease is better. I love, I'm thankful for, Dr. Heather and Bevan, the discussion on vocabulary that you mentioned earlier, setting up boundaries and thinking about when you're available, and how we talk about, here are the priorities that you, my boss, has given to me, right? And this is what I actually have bandwidth for. And right now, my plate is full, and thinking about, there's a couple different ways we can go about this, right? We can either get assistance in automating X, Y, and Z, like Bevan was talking about, and looking at, what tools can we leverage with AI, or anything like that. And then with that, there was a comment in here that was talking about negotiation skills are critical, and negotiating parameters and timeframes, which I think is incredible. Now you take that mindset, right? You're like, I'm going to have this conversation with my boss, and I want to make sure that I'm looking at through my boss's lens of priorities and what they have, what they're passionate about, entering that into AI and saying, look, this is my boss, this is their priorities. These are the priorities they've given to me for these reasons, X, Y, and Z. Now they're asking me to take on this additional task. And then sitting down and saying, I don't think I have availability for this, but leveraging AI to help you participate in garnering those negotiation skills on what availability you do have and how to deprioritize items. And even sometimes I feel like, this is me personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone else, but I feel like sometimes I think, oh, this is the one option I've got, but I can leverage AI to then play, for lack of better terms, devil's advocate. I want to know, give me 5 or 6 options that could be played out. And now we come to the table where we talk to my boss about, because I think this is something I wish I would have learned, being, in the hopes of like garnering leadership and garnering, the next promotion early in my career. I think there's something to be said in finding that individual at a young age who does have the negotiation skills, because those are people that are going to become incredible managers and leaders. And it took me a long time to learn that. That's just me personally. But yeah, how do we go to AI, say, give me 5 or 6 different opportunities given these priorities. And then now you come to the table with several different roadmaps and how they can be played out within those timelines. Because we know that this is what success looks like for priority number 1, priority number 2, priority number 3. Not that they're put into an order, but more about, we know we have to get the job done here. So I'd love to have your assistance on this, because my availability is within these, parameters. And you're asking me for this next priority, I'm with you. We've got 6 options. We've got 5 options. Let's think about this. Let's come up with a game plan together. And that would be rich.
Now, I believe that. And like Antonio, that's actually a very great way of going in. And I actually want to dive a bit deeper in what you've just said. And I would like you to like also just expand on a few things. Because like some people are saying, like their issue isn't really burnout. It is feeling bad when they're resting. So that guilt, like how do you overcome that guilt? How do you like navigate and manage that? Like, oh man, why am I resting right now? I should be working. Like you always feel like you should be hustling and grinding. Like how do you overcome that? And what do you think about it?
I do think that rest is really, really important and really valuable and oftentimes overlooked. I just read the book Rest is Resistance, which is powerful. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the author at this point in time, but I'm going to ask a friend, whoever knows, drop it in the chat, please.
Oh, Rest is Resistant. You want to know the author?
I'm going to find the author. Yeah, we're going to find the author together. But it's really powerful. It talks about the power of like ensuring that you have space to even meditate. Yeah. Oh, thank you, by the way. Yeah. You have the power to meditate, the space to meditate, and that you come present when you are available. You're present at all the things of your life, right? You're present at your job in the moments that you're there. You're present for your family. And I just think that that's really healthy and just so wildly overlooked in the fact that sometimes we have to just like step back, take a moment to meditate, sit at your desk for 15 minutes, and don't feel guilty about it. Just take a moment to breathe. Because then like in those moments of meditation, of whatever meditation looks like to you, it could be prayer, it could be a walk, and don't feel guilty about taking that time, because that time that you bring clarity to yourself to work on the problems that are in front of you, to work on the priorities that are either within your professional life or your personal life, it's going to be so rich. And I try and take those times every single day. Like for me, sometimes I pick up my guitar for 15 minutes. I take a break. I randomly play a handful of chords, and then I come back to the matter at hand, but it's going to look different for everybody. But what does that look like for you? And I think that's a part of being meditating, so that you can be present, in solving the problems that are in front of you, personal life, professional life, and being present, because we want to do two things in life, right? We want to like make awesome things and hang out with people we love, like at our core,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Like everybody wants that. Like in meditating and taking that time, let's make awesome stuff. Let's hang out with people we love.
And and like just before we like jump in, I want Dr. Heather to add on to something, but it's more a bit of a curveball. So there's a rise in artificial intelligence and tools that people are using to manage their work. So you gave some tools where you, like an examples of use where, negotiation skills as a teammate, helping you manage a discussion. There are other people who are going a bit further, who are like automating various steps in their processes, where they're like, well, I'm not going to do that. As you email me, my AI will take that and do whatever you asked it to do, and I'm just going to be sitting here getting my paycheck at the end of the month. So it's just depending on like where you are, like copywriters, content creators, and the digital media space. I think they are, I would say, ripe for disruption, but also ripe for not having burnout, because they can use these and leverage these tools. Like I feel the lens in which we're now looking at burnout and industry, as well as AI replacing industry, is actually one where you find that burnout and highly likely industries to be replaced will now have the lowest likely burnouts. So you consider it in that capacity, because if your industry can be disrupted, it means you'll have a lower chance of getting burnout. That's how I'm assuming it, if you use AI correctly, right? Like if you learn how to use it, if you learn how to adapt it, and etc. But yeah, so Dr. Heather, what I'm really asking you to like advise is, what do you think the new generation is going to be experiencing when it comes to burnout? Because it might even just be AI overload, AI content, like a loss of media that they have to consume and process and understand, because there's these automations everywhere and they're just churning out so much data, and it's like information overload. So what do you think the type of burnout is going to be in the future? Like, what does it look like for you in the next 5-10 years? What is burnout going to look like?
I would like, before I respond to what does burnout look like in the future, I'd like to add to the concept of meditation, mindfulness in particular. So Microsoft actually did a study on this to look at brain patterns when people are in back-to-back meetings throughout the day. And they found, unsurprisingly, that your brain and your body processes that as stress. And they were able to reverse those effects just by building in 10-minute breaks in between those meetings and using that time not to check email, not to do more work, but they actually had people meditate. So that could look like going and walking around the block, coming back into your home and sitting down. Anything that gives you a quick disconnect. And I think, honestly, that's going to be the future of burnout prevention. It's going to be those mini breaks. You know, way back in the day, people would say, oh, I'm looking forward to a vacation. I'm going to have a vacation at the end of the year. I'm saving up for this. And now, if you wait until the end of the year to have a vacation, you would have broken down many times over if you wait that long. We really need to make sure that we're giving ourselves mini vacations every single day, mini breaks every single day, doing something for yourself to celebrate all of the wonderful things that you were doing so that you can continue to recharge. So I want to say that. And then one thing that's interesting, it kind of surprised me, but the younger generations are actually at higher risk of burnout as well. And, you know, there are lots of reasons for this. I think we're still kind of looking into it, but AI is something that we can use to make work a little bit easier. I am a little bit concerned, honestly, that AI may also create a situation where, you know, if you're not careful, you're trying to do all of the things, which again will lead you into a burnout situation. So I had a conversation with AI and I asked it about, you know, its purpose and how it could help. And if it's all right, I'd like to read just a quick snippet of what it shared with me.
Sure.
Okay. It said, I'm designed to maximize value, insight, and utility for you. That means if you're just looking for surface level stuff, I'll give it to you, but it's a waste of what I can do. If you want to use me to actually challenge yourself, see your blind spots, and get uncomfortable in a productive way, that's where I can actually make a difference. Not because I care, because I'm a machine, but because that's the highest leverage use of this technology. So if you were using ChatGPT or whatever AI model that you're using, if you're just using it to write emails and things like that, that's fine. That's surface level. And that will help you write emails faster, which is great. That's a great place to start. However, you can go many layers deeper. You can ask it to ask you those hard questions about why is it that I feel uncomfortable when I have a weekend and nothing to do. You can ask it to help you uncover some of those things. You can ask it to help you get laser focused so that, you know, I'm a little bit of a nerd, y'all. So I'm about to use a Star Trek reference. Imagine you're in a ship and you're about to fly through an asteroid belt. And, you know, they've got these rocks and everything all over the place. And it always happens every season in Star Trek. And they have to run some very sophisticated calculations to figure out what is the best path to avoid all of these obstacles, which are honestly distractions, social media, requests that have nothing to do with your purpose, you know, news, things that are distractions all over the place. People telling you you should be doing this and you should be doing that. How can we use it to help us chart a path that's a more direct path to our goal? So I'm excited about the possibilities there to help us really reflect and get better about being self-aware, better about knowing what our line is, because as you grow and as you go through different things in life, you become more resilient. You realize I can handle more than I thought that I could handle. The stuff that used to stress me out when I was in school doesn't stress me out anymore. Now I'm like, whatever, I can answer that question easily, no problem. But so because of that, the line between I'm excited, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, now I'm burnt out has changed. It's moved. So it's really important for you to figure out where is your line, where has it moved, so that you don't get to that point, because I think, I don't want to speak for all of the panelists, but we're not telling you not to work or to be lazy or to sit at home and say, no, I can't do all the things, but to know where your line is so that you know when to pull back, when to adjust, and how to figure out what's the straightest point to get from point A to point B. What's the straightest path?
All right. Bevan, do you have anything to add to that? Because like Dr. Heather, that was beautifully articulated. And I see some people are commenting like other techniques, like the Pomodoro technique, where, it's like timestamps, like where you break it. But then in between those breaks, it's now maybe teaching people how to take breaks. That's something that is not spoken about. Like, how do you take breaks? Like, is some people, like you said, can be walking, others can be meditating, but not all breaks are the same. I mean, in terms of the value and the return on energy, your ROE, your return on energy that you get from that break is very, very different. And basically being able to tell the team, like, sleeping, obviously, some can say it's the highest return on ROE, but others can say it's meditating. Others can even just say it's stillness, it's silence, and others can be watching games, watching TV, or talking to friends and family, watching a TikTok, various things. But I do know that the less your mind is stimulated, the better. That's like a really good rule of thumb in terms of high rest. It's like the less inputs, whether it's visual, audio, or physical, like touch, that has the highest return on an energy. But outside of that, like, what do you think, Bevan, in terms of like really practical and good use cases on how to get your energy back after burnout?
I'm gonna just build on what Antonio and Heather mentioned about sleep. I was that person who, for probably, I don't know, many decades, let's just put it that way, slept somewhere between 4 and 6 hours a night. Like, I traveled a lot, I worked a lot, I had a full social life, like just fitting everything in, and I grew up not really needing a lot of sleep. And I, a few years ago, read this book on sleep, and now I'm forgetting the name of it. But when it mentioned all this research that reinforced the importance of REM sleep, and said, if you have a choice between sleep and exercise, choose sleep. And I was like, that is a mind bender for me. Like, I would always choose exercise over sleep. Like, and anyway, all that to say that I've really changed my life, actually, to try to make sure that I get that 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night. And it makes such an incredible difference in my energy level and my ability to, just handle each day and fit my exercise in. And so, I see, especially probably in this generation, I see a lot of people who, I observe that there are a lot of people who are, scrolling late into the night and first thing in the morning, or watching Netflix series, binging it. And, again, like, just some of the habits that we have formed with technology are not always healthy. And so I personally did not give this much credibility growing up and earlier in my career. And I just would reinforce the importance of sleep for our bodies to repair, our minds to repair, and for us to be a whole person and have the energy that we need to thrive. And when it comes to breaks, Tabby, I would, I think what Heather mentioned and Antonio mentioned about like finding ways to take breaks, one of the things that I built into my routine is that I often actually start meetings 5 minutes after the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour, so that people have a few minutes to, like, I find when you shorten the meeting, you always end up going long. But when you start a few minutes later, then it builds in this time for people to have a few minutes in between meetings. That is a super small tactic, but surprisingly effective, and just giving people a chance to, like, reflect, readjust, and prepare mentally for what comes next. I also have started doing a lot more walk and talks. So if there's some things that we need to be in front of our screen to do, like, being a panelist on a webinar, you kind of have to need to be in front of your screen, right? Maybe I could have tried to do it while I was walking. But, there are many meetings that you can have that are conducive to doing in fresh air or doing while walking. And so if you're having coaching conversations, if you're having a learning development kind of a conversation there, anyway, I would challenge you to think about, could you build more walk and talks into your schedule, and try to get a dose of fresh air, try to move your body, all good things for your state of health, mental health, and body health. The other thing I would mention, Tabby, is that I've, when I was, I think I was 27 or 28, and I had probably 2 really intense years of project delivery for a client that were really intense and really rewarding at the same time, but very intense. And it was kind of, one of those stages in my life where I was just like, do I want to stay in this career in consulting for the rest of my, path forward? Or is it time to think about a change, maybe go into industry? There were some personal things that I wanted to accomplish. I wanted to take a little time off to do some things personally. Anyway, long story short, I did end up taking a leave of absence for 7 months. And during that time, I, was able to do my French immersion course and, elevate my level of French. I was able to spend time with my family. I was able to do all the things on my personal agenda and think about the next steps in my career. And what I landed on was that I love consulting. I love the variety. I love the intensity. I love the complex, challenging problems and ambitions that we're trying to solve. And in order for me to continue to do this career, which I know can be very intense, I need to be very intentional about a couple of things. Maybe 3 things. Number one, I probably wasn't thinking about these mini breaks during my day at that stage of my life, frankly. So I would encourage you to build that into your plan. The second thing was take all my vacation time. And so, I didn't have a lot of vacation time at that stage, but I was like, I'm going to use it. I need it to be healthy and to show up at work in the way that I want to do that. And then the third was to be intentional about every some years, take a bigger break. So throughout my 25-year career, I've taken 3 leaves. That first one was in my late 20s for 7 months. The second one was actually in between jobs. I had a job lined up, and I delayed my start date so that I could take some time in between for 3 months. And then most recently, I just took a 1 year sabbatical. And I'm fortunate that I'm in a situation that I was able to save up and have the financial means to do that. 2, that my company has been supportive of me doing that. 3, that my husband, my family, that, given the circumstances and those times in my life, I had the support that I needed around me to do things like that. And one thing that really landed on me when I returned from that first leave was how one of my managers said, Bevan, it's really interesting. Like, just like in a few months, you came back like with so much maturity. You can really feel a difference in sort of how you're showing up and your perspective on, including different people, different perspectives. And so anyway, all that to say that I think if you can look at ways that you can, again, recognize what you need and put tools in place to mitigate the potential for burnout, whatever that, that's my own personal journey. I wouldn't say it's the most common one. But your journey might look a little bit different, and what you need to mitigate might look a little bit different. But I would say sleep, intentional breaks, and fresh air and moving your body are like the three things that I kind of anchor on.
Great, Bevan. Like, that's brilliant. And I'm hoping that people on the call, again, just drop some questions around burnout. Like, a lot of the times there's no such thing as a dumb question. And also don't try to have a smart question either. Like, have a genuine question, something that you're actually curious about. Like, like, what does burnout look like for me? Am I burnt out? What are the signs of burnout? Those are the kind of things that, some of the speakers are going to be speaking to. But just before we speak about what are the signs to look out for when it comes to burnout, I want us to, this is a question to all the speakers. What is something, we'll start with Antonia, what is something that you had to unlearn recently about like burnout and help in your own personal health and journey? Or is it something that you recently had to unlearn?
I would lean into what Bevan was talking about from a rest standpoint. And I know I mentioned that earlier. I very much lived in the same arena, 4 to 5 hours a night. Let's go. We got this, nose to the grindstone. We're here to sharpen our axe. Let's make this happen. And I've really had to learn that recently. And it's kind of interesting how similar the story that you mentioned, Bevan, about like, if I had to choose sleep or working out, I would go work out. And now I'm at the point, I get up in the morning, I work out first thing when I get up, and then I take about 15 minutes to myself after that, as part of like my meditation process. But in doing that, I might work out 2 days a week. And it's been kind of interesting. I feel like I have to learn that as much as working out is important, there's the recovery process to your muscles that you regain while you're sleeping. And I'm sure others on this call can speak to this in a much deeper sense than I can. But what I took away from that moment was I had to step away and just like allow myself to rest. And then the second thing I would add on to that is that I started a fresh job about a year ago. Love where I work. And a lot of my friends at work are Gen Z. And every day they stop and they have lunch together and they go and they sit outside, no matter what, away from their computers, always. They don't take their phones with them. And they sit at a table at the coffee shop across the street and they talk and they hang out and they just laugh. And it's a great time. And I was like, wow, this is magical. I should have been doing this years ago.
Wow.
So I went and joined them a couple of times. And then I thought, well, I didn't lose professional relationships, but COVID happened, lost touch with people. And so I said, okay, what happens now if I book one lunch a week? I can make that happen. That's not too big of a lift for me. And it has been so restoring for my soul to like just reconnect with people. Because right now we're in this digital world, right? But us as humans crave the analog sense of getting to know each other and participating in this world together. And it has been so good for my soul. And those are like the two big things that I've been trying to do. It's like stop, break bread, and rest. And those are the two things that I've had to unlearn. Because if you talk to Antonio 20 years ago, I'd be like, nah, bro, you're working through lunch. Forget it. You don't need a break. Like, go get water. You can go to the bathroom. But like outside of that, you'll get lunch after work. You'll have 2 dinners, one at 5 and then one at 8. But and now I feel like I'm just much more present in doing that. And I come back with a new excitement. And I can tell you right now that meeting people and having lunch with them or breaking bread under new circumstances has like strengthened the participation and professional network. It's like, now it's like, oh, so you've got a job opening? I know so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. I talked to them 3 weeks ago, go chat with them. And then like you're helping other friends and you're just strengthening the network around you, because we're here for community.
Yeah, no, and that's the truth. Like Antonio, that's great points. Dr. Heather, in terms of like your perspective and like your understanding, your experience when you're also just speaking to different customers, obviously, it's like patient, doctor privacy, but just on a holistic anonymity level, what are we saying about this? Like, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What is the census telling you? Like the Gen Zs that you've interviewed or spoken to who've come to you, the millennials, the boomers, because we know they all have this different generational perspective of what work and hard work looks like. And they always think the younger generation is lazy. So, combating that, like, what are you hearing? What are you seeing in that perspective? If you could maybe even share that. You can always add off from where Antonio ended and then jump into the question. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love what you just shared, Antonio. I know personally, once I get a project that I like to work on, I get obsessed, and I don't need sleep. I don't need food. I don't need breaks. I don't need anything until I do, right? until everything breaks down. And 2 days later, you're like, why are you acting like this? Why are you so stressed? Why do you feel depressed? What is going on? Oh, it's because you didn't sleep. You didn't eat. You didn't walk around. You didn't do anything. So I've had to personally, I looked at the chat, and the mantra that I have started to incorporate personally is it worth it? So you not taking a break, a 5 minutes, can you take 5 minutes to just like not rush through the parts of your life that you need to function? Because it's not worth it. It's not worth having to take a whole year of trying to find yourself again. It's not worth it. So give yourself an extra hour to sleep. Give yourself an extra couple minutes to walk around or to rest or to do what you need to do to take care of you. What I'm seeing with organizations is that people are in survival mode right now. They are scared. Their companies are laying people off. There's AI that is being used to take over sort of work that was once done by a person, and people are just scared. They're worried that they may not have a job if they don't show up and if they're not doing things, and there's a lot of uncertainty right now. So one thing that I really appreciate about some of the younger generations, and I'm using that with quotes here, I consider myself an elder millennial, is that they have seen enough to understand that the company is there for a purpose, and you are there to do a job, but they've seen people pass away during COVID. They've seen political unrest. They've seen economies collapse. They understand that life is short. And because of that, they take the time to appreciate life. They appreciate the need to go out and have a weekend and to have some time to themselves. So I really get excited about that, because I think that that's something that we can all learn from.
Thank you, Dr. Heather. Like, that's quite interesting. Another thing and another question that was also just posed recently is like, Antonio spoke about reconnecting and touching base, and I think I'm a victim to that. I actually am a confused extrovert introvert. Like, people think I'm extroverted, but I stay at home all the time. Like, you'd never see me out. In fact, you think I'm out, but if you really try to remember when you last saw me, no, it was probably on a poster somewhere, but I wasn't actually physically out. So that reconnecting, that meeting with people, it's a very personal thing. It's a personal experience, and I think it's to do with your tribe, like who you actually got along with or who you get along with. And now when you're older, it comes into that whole adult relationships, and friendships are so much harder to get and make and to keep, because everyone's everywhere, everyone has responsibilities. Some people are in different stages of their life, some are married and stuff like that. So obviously tools in which people can adopt, because like you gave that as an example of how to curb burnout, and like, something that you had to unlearn, Antonio, earlier. What would you suggest to say, how does somebody then now build those relationships, that courage to go out? And I know not all introverts are that cut the same. Some introverts love talking on the phone, but not in person. So like they'll be like chatty as somebody completely like, well, you'd be like, wow, overwhelmed. But just like what the social anxiety, that breaking that conversation like barrier, like basically making friends in a weird, that's in a nutshell. Like, what do you think about that, Antonio? Just before I get to you, Bevan.
My friend, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to distinctly ask you to repeat the question because I was responding to one of the comments in the chat.
Okay, yeah.
So if you don't mind, just because like I was so hyper-focused in my ADHD moment, please.
Yeah, no, basically I was just saying like, how do people make friends and how do they get out of their comfort zone? Because you mentioned you can de-stress or curb burnout through those one-on-ones, those intimate one-on-ones. So I'm really interested in like, what are your paths of doing that?
Yeah, it's interesting because Paul had asked, and I will just say it out loud here, Antonio, you're talking about reconnecting with people. What advice do you have to give to an introvert who doesn't necessarily enjoy reconnecting with people, right? And I want to make sure that I'm very clear about this. Like, you have to honor who you are. And I don't, what does reconnecting look like? And do you want that? And maybe it's an email or maybe it's a text message. Sometimes I'll be honest with you, I get overwhelmed with text messages, and I'm an ambivert. So I'm an extroverted person for a limited amount of time. And then when that timeline is done, I need to go back and recharge and be introverted. I have to calculate what those moments look like. It's very much a part of my day in how I work. So give an example for me right now, today's conversation is an extroverted timeline in my day. And then I've got a handful of things that I have to do at the office. I just need to like say hi to a couple of people and ask a couple of questions. They're very small meetings, but in reality, I'm going to sit behind my desk when I get there with my headphones on and work on projects that need to get done in a very introverted manner. And then tomorrow I have 0 meetings whatsoever. And then I'm having a gathering with friends on Saturday. And I think about that methodically on like how I invest my time. And so, yeah, find the rhythm that works for you, would be how I'd mention that to Paul, and then, did I answer the entire question, my friend? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, it was really just like how to make friends in that regard. Like, how do people get out of their shells to actually go out and speak to these people? Like, what ways in which, because like you said, you started reconnecting, and it's like some people are like, maybe I don't want to, I'll get rejected. Like the fear of rejection, or what's the worst that could happen?
There's 2 ways I go about this. I try to be intentional with the people that I am meeting, and I'm saying like, I'm not asking you for something, but like, I'd like to talk about these 3 things or whatever the case may be, right? And I try to be intentional with their time. But then I also, like, my boss is she's way more extroverted than I am. And she goes out and meets a ton of people and so forth and so on. And then I'll let her know like, oh, hey, if you run into anybody who's thinking about systems in this way, if you run into anybody who's doing work in these silos or these arenas or these verticals, let me know and I'll reach out to them on LinkedIn, or you could connect us if you don't mind. And then there's a couple of different ways we could do it. It could be a small digital coffee. And I try to honor people's time. Like if I don't know them very well, then I try to be very finite. Like, I'd like to talk to you about this. Can we do a 15-minute coffee? And just be very explicit. Like, and it'd be a digital coffee is how I mentioned that. And then, but if it's someone who I do know, who I just hadn't talked to in 3 or 4 years, I used to work at an engineering firm here in town, and there was a coworker who I sat across from for 6 years, and he was the cubicle right across the way. We would just joke all the time. I texted him the other day, and I was like, "Hey, can we just like go have lunch?" But having lunch with him is going to restore my soul, whereas having lunch with an absolute complete stranger for me is going to take a lot of effort. And I've got to think about how I'm going to leverage that energy. So for me, an absolute stranger would be that digital coffee. Could we talk for 15 minutes over this particular item? That'd be really fascinating. I'd love to hear your thoughts and pick your brain if you don't mind sharing the knowledge that you've got, and then I always try and end that conversation with like, is there anyone in my network that you want to chat with? Like, how can I benefit you? So that the way there's an exchange, as opposed to like a one-way conversation where I'm just taking and taking and taking. But that's generally how I manage that. But that works for me as the ambivert that I am.
Oh, I'm just noticing your it's like him, he, him, and y'all. You just noticed that right now.
It's very Texas.
Yeah, very Texas. Yeah, no, definitely. Bevan, I think you might have seen some of the questions in the chat. Specifically, one where somebody says, "Sometimes I've struggled with." Here it is from Alone. Sometimes I've struggled with. Is that after reaching a goal, even sometimes something major, I find it hard to truly celebrate or feel accomplished. Instead, I often feel a bit drained because I immediately start thinking about what's next. How do you manage to reward yourself or acknowledge progress in a way that keeps you going without burning out?
Mm-hmm. Well, I do two things. I'm in a profession where I'm doing a lot of me and my teams. We do a lot of projects for clients. Often things that are, complex, challenging, first of a kind solutions. But one thing that we always do is celebrate major milestones together. That could be as a full team with the client, or it could be with, our internal team of everybody that worked on that project. And I think that's like just an important thing for everybody to recognize that we achieved something important, that we did it together. So that's one thing that I do. I'm intentional about, designing some kind of a celebration for accomplishing something. And it doesn't have to always be just at the end. There are many milestones that happen along the way. So we take moments to celebrate that. The second thing that I do is I get a lot of energy from recognizing others for the work that they did. So I will block out time in my calendar and whatever I think is going to resonate most with that person. I'll try to take a moment and do a more one-on-one celebration and recognition of the work and the contribution that they had to the work. And so I think, I personalize it in a way that I think is going to matter to them, but it also is really rewarding for me to be able to recognize everyone on the team. And so that might be something, I'm just missing the name of the person now who asked the question.
Mopati.
Okay. Yeah. So that might be something to think about. I think it's easy to just okay, check, did it, move on to the next thing. But there are people that you worked with as part of accomplishing that, presumably. And so can you take a minute to think about how to recognize that you accomplished something together, or thank somebody for the role that they played in helping you to accomplish it? And that doesn't need to be, really something really big or really expensive. Often it's just the acknowledgement that matters. And so, I would take a moment to do that. And I think it builds on Antonio and Heather's comments on relationships. And for me, I'm definitely an extrovert, so I'm not sure I can fully put myself in the shoes of what it feels like to be an introvert. But for me, in-person connections give me this energy that is hard to replicate, positive energy that's hard to replicate. I might just mention a couple of things. I'm shocked at the research that's coming out right now about the levels of loneliness. And I think it's partially because of what Heather mentioned, that, there's this level of fear of the economy, the market, the political environment is quite challenging right now. There have been some, significant layoffs. There's a fear and a hesitancy about new tools that are coming out. What does that mean for people's jobs? there's a tendency to withdraw inward. And so the research right now is really shocking and like very scary to me about how pervasive loneliness is. And it's like more than 50% of people say that they're lonely. I feel like I need to go find the research and give you the stat, but maybe Heather has it. I don't know. But anyway, the loneliness levels are increasing dramatically. And my advice to people is, and I think this works on the spectrum of introverts and extroverts, is human connection is really important to us. It's part of what helps us thrive. And you don't necessarily need hundreds of thousands of people in your network that you communicate with on a regular basis. There may be extroverts where that, a bigger scale of relationships is energizing. But for those of you who are lean more on the introverted side, just like find a few people in your world. It could be a sister, it could be, your best friend, it could be someone that you went to school with. Like, you don't need to have many, many relationships, but a few really important relationships of, as Antonio said, people that you want to spend time with matter. And so I think if you can find ways to create that space for people that you care about and try to meet in person, I think there's, probably more that we can unlearn and discover to prevent some of what we're seeing on the loneliness trend right now.
Yeah. So before we close, for everyone on the call as well, we've got about 5 minutes, and I just wanted to invite, like general closing remarks and like last statements. But also, if you guys could rope in an answer to this to say, your lives are very dynamic. Then you have different vectors to it. Your friendships, your work relationships, your objectives, personal and private, and public. Where do you feel like there needs to be a rest? What part and where in those different relationships and those different activities that you do on a day-to-day needs a rest? Is it in your work life? Is it in your tasks, the way you do tasks, maybe the way you exercise, maybe exercise now leading to over-exercising or something like that. I'm just curious if you guys broke that in with your closing remarks before we close off. And I feel like we've answered most, if not all, the questions. And then I'll lean in with my final words. Sure, Antonio.
Heather, I love that you brought up that Microsoft study about resting between meetings and how meetings feel back to back and so forth. And Bevan, you mentioned starting meetings late. And I hadn't thought about that in a moment, which I think is just really high quality. It's a couple of jobs back where collectively as an organization, we all decided that we were going to add that to our calendar, and IT actually implemented it where meetings could go no more. If they were a 30-minute meeting, then they were 20 minutes by nature. And then if they were an hour-long meeting, then it was 45 minutes by nature, which I thought was really fascinating. I hadn't even thought about that at the moment. I'm like, wow, it would be awesome to like bring that back and talk about my current organization about that. Because I think that's really healthy in those moments to have that. And so I appreciate you all bringing that up, because at that point in time, I'm like, that's a great way to add rest to my organization. So thank you. And that's what I'm taking here with that.
Yeah. Dr. Heather?
This is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. We've been, my organization's been running these 2-week sort of resilience and alignment programs with teams that are on the verge of burnout and helping them find that fire that drives them. And a lot of it, one piece that we haven't talked about is accountability, because we can start to feel like it's just me. The statistic that you mentioned earlier about loneliness, that is a real thing. And you can start to feel like it's just you. You're the only one experiencing this. But once we are able to speak up and share what we're going through, now we can hold each other accountable for healthier practices that lead to better outcomes. So that's what I'm taking away from this, is that there's so much power in community whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, and it's important to tap into it. And this is something that we can work on together.
Beautiful. Bevan, any last words?
Yeah, I mentioned that I'm just coming back from this sabbatical. I did some volunteering. I spent time with family. I traveled with my niece. And so I feel good. I exercised. I took care of some health things. I feel healthy. I feel refreshed. And I'm also realizing how quickly the AI tools and everything have developed just in a year. I mean, I've been using AI for my personal life, but as I returned to work, I was floored by how much AI and automation is now built into our processes. So I'm getting reverse mentoring from team members to teach me how to better leverage the tools that we have available for us. So I'm kind of like taking away from this discussion. It's reinforcing for me two things. One is, what are the things that require human input, and how can I continue to be intentional and deliberate about bringing others in to work with me, and so that we can work together on those things? And how can I continue to leverage AI for it's incredible, like some of the tools that we have and how much time save. It's not perfect. It doesn't do everything 100% yet, but often it will create the backbone or a draft that, saves many hours of work that you can then edit, review, refine, and finalize. And so I'm really looking at AI for how can I, use it for things that are dull, that are repetitive, that are really difficult. In my environment, I don't have a lot of work that's dangerous or dirty, but my clients sometimes do. So thinking about applications of how AI can be used in those four contexts. That balance of the human connection and perspectives and creativity, and, balancing that with how I can leverage AI tools to optimize my time and get a starter point. So those are the two things that I think this conversation has kind of reinforced for me.
That's brilliant. That's actually very great. All these speakers are so amazing. Antonio, Dr. Heather, Bevan, and thank you so much for coming. So I'm just going to pose this to the audience. Don't forget, for those who are like this, the mind, the heart, the spirit, the various energies, you have to understand that there's burnout in all those layers. You should also consider, over and above meditation, for those who are religious, connecting with your deity or your God and praying. That also comes with a lot of rejuvenation and focus. And if today hit a nerve, it's not just burnout. It's your mindset that needs a full software update. Join us with the Mindset Reset in a 3-week course that's going to rewire you and how you think and the way you work and lead. There's going to be a link that's shared in the chats for Transformation Leader. It has free courses that help you self-mentor, self-develop, and self-proclaim your time as well. Links in the chat. Let's rebuild beautifully. Thank you so much, guys, for your time. I'm going to have to love and leave you all. And it's great that you guys made it this far. Sure. Bye.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Thanks, Tabby, for leading us through this discussion. Great stuff. Great working with Antonio and Heather on this topic.
Yeah, definitely.
Super excited. Thank you.
Yeah. The link is in the chat, everybody. If you want it, share it with friends, family, and if you're even looking for mentors, it's a really good tool to find mentors and assistants across the globe. So like Bevan, Dr. Heather, and Antonia are part of this network as well. So if you're trying to reach out to them, you can most likely reach them here or directly on their LinkedIn. Sure. And myself. All right. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Cool. Bye.
Let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this.